The research station Prometheus 7 hung in space like a forgotten piece of space junk, its hull patched with mismatched alloy plates and emergency sealant. Inside, Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic display that flickered with the kind of instability typical of equipment running far past its maintenance cycle. Another notification blinked in angry red. Fumending TRM. She didn't even flinch. Around her, the remaining members of her research team looked like they were about to break. Marcus Chen, the team's quantum interface specialist, had already begun boxing up his personal effects. Arya Patel, their biomechanical engineer, was running her hands through her hair, leaving it standing on end, a visual representation of their frayed nerves. "We're not done," Elena said. The words were soft but carried the weight of tungsten. Marcus turned, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Not done. The Galactic Research Consortium just pulled our last funding stream. We got exactly 17 days before they repossessed this entire station. 17 days to prove a theory that every major research institution has called impossible." Elena's workspace was a controlled chaos of holographic schematics, quantum entanglement models, and what looked like a dozen half-completed prototypes. Most would see junk. She saw potential. The centerpiece was a neural adaptive prosthetic system that looked more like a nightmare of exposed circuitry and organic interfaces than a coherent piece of technology. "They called the first computers impossible," she replied, her fingers dancing across a modified neural interface. "They said faster-than-light communication was impossible. They said humans were a technological joke in a galaxy of advanced civilizations." Arya walked over, her expert eyes scanning the prototype. "This isn't just a prosthetic anymore, is it? You've been modifying it. It's become something else entirely." A holographic schematic expanded between them, revealing layers of complexity that defied traditional technological understanding. What had started as a project to create advanced neural prosthetics for humans with traumatic injuries had mutated into something far more revolutionary. The device integrated biological adaptability with quantum computing in a way no one had ever conceived. Its core was a living system, not just a machine, but an evolving organism that could learn, adapt, and potentially rewrite its own fundamental programming. The Zornak believe technological superiority is about rigid perfection, Elena explained, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. They build systems so complex that they become brittle, inflexible. We're creating something that doesn't just compute, it understands. Marcus approached the prototype, his skepticism evident. Understanding requires more than complex algorithms. It needs something organic. Something unpredictable. Elena's smile was predatory. Exactly. The station's ambient lighting flickered, another system failing. Outside the reinforced windows, the vast emptiness of space seemed to press against the hull, a constant reminder of their isolation. They were a team of 5 brilliant misfits, rejected by every major research institution, working on a theory that most considered technological heresy. Their funding had come from the most unlikely of sources, a consortium of disabled veterans who believed in pushing the boundaries of human potential. Now, even that lifeline was severed. "We've got one shot," Elena said, turning to her team. "One demonstration at the Galactic Technology Exposition. If we can show just a fragment of what this prototype can do, everything changes." Arya looked skeptical. "And if we fail?" "We won't," Elena responded, her certainty absolute. As if in response to her declaration, the prototype pulsed, not with electricity, but with something more, a suggestion of awareness, of potential. Marcus noticed it too. Did it just respond? Elena said nothing, but her eyes burned with a mixture of scientific passion and something darker, something that suggested the prototype was more than just a piece of technology. It was a weapon, a statement, a challenge to everything the galactic scientific community believed about human capabilities. 17 days. 17 days to prove the impossible. 17 days to show the universe that humanity was far from finished. The Galactic Technology Exposition sprawled across an entire artificial planetoid, a monument to technological achievement that dwarfed human imagination. Massive holographic displays erupted from crystalline structures that defied architectural physics, each representing a different species' technological marvel. Quantum processors the size of continents, living neural networks that pulsed with alien consciousness, zero-point energy systems that could power entire star systems. These were the norm. And then there was the human section. A single, cramped pavilion tucked into the absolute furthest corner of the exposition, so marginalized that most attendees would need a specialized navigation system just to find it. The human delegation consisted of 12 individuals, a mix of scientists, engineers, and bureaucrats who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the edge of their allocated space, her eyes scanning the vast exposition hall. Around her, holographic displays from other species transformed constantly. Living art, technological poetry, representations of innovation so advanced they seemed like magic. Their own display was depressingly mundane. A few holographic schematics, some prototype models under reinforced glass, and a team that looked more like underfunded academics than galactic innovators. The Zornak delegation arrived like a force of nature. They weren't just a species, they were a technological statement. Beings of living crystal and quantum circuitry, their bodies shifted and reconfigured with each movement. Where organic beings walked, they seemed to flow, quantum states rippling through their crystalline forms. Each member of the delegation was a walking supercomputer, their very existence a demonstration of technological superiority. Their lead representative, a towering structure of translucent blue crystal named Vornak Prime, approached the human section. Its body hummed with computational energy, holographic data streams dancing around its form like living aurora. Humanity. Vornak Prime's voice resonated directly into the minds of everyone present, a telepathic broadcast that carried pure, unfiltered contempt. Your technological contribution to the Galactic Confederation remains negligible. The holographic display behind Vornak Prime exploded with data, a comprehensive breakdown of technological achievements. Species after species, their innovations charted in brilliant colors. The human section was a tiny, almost invisible dot at the bottom of the chart. Marcus Chen, standing beside Elena, muttered under his breath, "Here we go again." Vornak Prime continued, its crystalline form pulsing with condescension. Your most advanced quantum computer is equivalent to our most rudimentary computational systems. Your faster-than-light technology is laughably primitive. Your neural interfaces are barely more sophisticated than mechanical prosthetics. Belina said nothing, but her eyes, sharp, calculating, were recording every single moment, every quantum fluctuation of the Zornak's communication, every subtle shift in their technological demonstration. The Zornak's presentation was a brutal showcase of technological might. They demonstrated a quantum communication network that could transmit information across entire galactic sectors in microseconds. They showed neural interfaces that could process more information in a nanosecond than human brains could in a lifetime. We are offering the Galactic Confederation continued technological guidance, Vornak Prime declared. Humanity, at its current stage, requires management, supervision. It was a public humiliation. Calculated, deliberate, designed to remind every species present of the technological hierarchy. What Vornak Prime didn't see was Elena's slight smile. The way her fingers were subtly moving, interfacing with a modified neural device hidden beneath her uniform. The prototype they'd developed wasn't just sitting in their pavilion. It was here, listening, learning. As the Zornak delegation moved away, leaving behind a wake of technological condescension, Aryapato leaned close to Elena. They have no idea, do they? Not a clue, Elena responded, her voice barely a whisper. The exposition continued around them. Billions of credits of technology, centuries of scientific achievement, all on display. And in the smallest, most overlooked corner, a team of human scientists prepared something that would change everything. 17 days after losing their funding, they were about to make their move. 3 weeks after the Galactic Technology Exposition, the first anomalies appeared in the Zornak communication networks. They were microscopic at first, barely perceptible glitches that most system administrators dismissed as routine maintenance errors. A quantum fluctuation here, a microsecond of signal interference there. Nothing to cause genuine concern. In the hidden research station Prometheus 7, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched multiple holographic displays, her fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that would have seemed incomprehensible to most scientific minds. Each display showed a different slice of the Zornak's supposedly impenetrable communication grid. Breakthrough, Marcus Chen whispered, his voice a mixture of disbelief and scientific ecstasy. The prototype, their neural adaptive system, was working. But working was too simple a term. It was infiltrating, learning, evolving. Arya Patel stood beside Elena, her biomechanical expertise allowing her to see the subtle nuances that others might miss. "It's not just accessing their systems," she said. "It's understanding them, mapping them from the inside." The device they had created was unlike any technological system in known galactic history. It wasn't a traditional computer or a simple neural interface. It was a living system, part biological, part quantum computational matrix, that could adapt, learn, and fundamentally rewrite its own operational parameters. Where traditional computing relied on rigid algorithms and predetermined pathways, their prototype was different. It learned like a biological organism. It adapted like a living creature. Each interaction with the Zornak's communication network was a learning experience, a moment of growth. The first major indication of their success came when a critical Zornak defense grid went dark for exactly 3.7 seconds. No alarms triggered, no emergency protocols activated. Just a brief, perfect moment of technological silence. "They won't even know we're here," Elena murmured, her eyes reflecting the complex holographic data streams. "We're a ghost in their most secure systems." The team had spent months developing an approach that went beyond traditional hacking. This wasn't about breaking through firewalls or exploiting vulnerabilities. This was about understanding, comprehending, becoming. Marcus pulled up a visualization of their infiltration. It looked like a living organism spreading through a complex network, tendrils of quantum data moving with an almost organic fluidity. Each interaction modified the prototype's own code, creating new pathways, new methods of interaction. "The Zornak build their systems like fortresses," Arya explained. "Massive, complex, impenetrable. But fortresses have a fundamental weakness. They're static, unchanging. Our system is the exact opposite. It's fluid, adaptive." The prototype was collecting data with every microsecond of interaction. Communication protocols, quantum encryption methods, the fundamental mathematical language underlying the Zornak's technological infrastructure. It wasn't just collecting, it was comprehending. Elena had designed the system based on a radical principle. True technological innovation comes from biological adaptability. The human brain didn't compute like a machine. It learned. It changed. It grew. Why shouldn't technology do the same? Each quantum interaction was a conversation. Each data packet a potential learning moment. The prototype was becoming something more than a piece of technology. It was becoming a living system that could think, adapt, and ultimately transform. By the end of the week, the Zornak would begin to notice something was wrong. But by then, it would be too late. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of technological interaction," Elena said, her voice a mixture of scientific passion and something darker. Something that suggested this was more than just a research project. This was a statement. A challenge to everything the galactic scientific community believed about human potential. Marcus looked at the displays, seeing the invisible tendrils of their prototype spreading through the most secure communication network in the known galaxy. They're going to lose their minds when they figure out what we've done." Elena's smile was predatory. That's the entire point. The prototype pulsed, not with electricity, not with traditional computational energy, but with something more, something alive, something that suggested they had created something far beyond a mere piece of technology. They had created a revolution. The research station Prometheus 7 had transformed. What had once been a marginally functional research facility now resembled a technological fortress. Every surface was covered with quantum-scrambled data streams, encrypted communication channels that would make the most advanced cryptographic systems look like children's puzzles. The team moved through a landscape of living technology, each step carefully calculated. Elena Rodriguez had become something more than a lead researcher. She was a strategist, a technological revolutionary. "We're no longer just developing a prototype," she told her team during their daily briefing. The holographic display behind her showed multiple layers of their infiltration into the Zornak systems, a complex web that looked more like a living neural network than a traditional data map. Marcus Chen had transformed their communication systems into a multilayered defensive grid. Each message, each data packet, was now a quantum puzzle. Traditional interception methods would find nothing but meaningless noise. To an outside observer, their communications would appear to be nothing more than random electromagnetic static. Arya Patel worked on the physical prototype, her hands moving with a surgeon's precision. The device had grown beyond its original design. What had started as a neural adaptive prosthetic system was now something entirely different, a technological chameleon that could adapt, learn, and fundamentally rewrite its own operational parameters. "The Zornak are starting to notice," Arya said, pulling up a holographic display of quantum communication patterns. Subtle changes were becoming apparent. Defensive protocols tightening, communication channels becoming more restricted. Elena's eyes narrowed. Good, let them feel the first tremors of what's coming. Their funding had come from an unlikely source, a consortium of disabled veterans and independent researchers who believed in pushing the boundaries of human potential. These were people who understood what it meant to be underestimated, to be told something was impossible. Now, with their backs against the wall, they were preparing for a confrontation that would redefine technological understanding. The prototype pulsed on the central workstation. It was no longer just a piece of technology. It was a living system that breathed, learned, evolved. Each interaction with the Zornak systems added another layer of complexity, another thread of understanding. "We've got one shot at this," Elena said, her voice cutting through the constant hum of technological activity. "One demonstration at the next Galactic Technology Forum that will make them understand what human innovation really means." Marcus pulled up a comprehensive analysis of their infiltration. The Zornak systems were like a massive, complex organism, incredibly advanced, but fundamentally rigid. Their quantum communication networks were built on the principle of absolute control, of predetermined pathways. Their prototype was the exact opposite. It learned. It adapted. It grew. "They build their technology like a fortress," Marcus explained, zooming in on the complex quantum communication patterns. "Massive walls, impenetrable defenses, but fortresses have a fundamental weakness. They don't adapt. They don't change." Arya added her analysis. "Our system is fluid, organic. It doesn't just break through defenses. It understands them, learns from them, becomes them." The team worked in shifts that blended into each other. Sleep became a secondary concern. Their entire existence had narrowed to this moment. This singular opportunity to prove that humanity was more than just a footnote in galactic technological history. Outside the station's reinforced windows, the vast emptiness of space seemed to press against the hull, a constant reminder of their isolation, of the odds stacked against them. But inside, something extraordinary was taking shape. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of their technological storm, watching the prototype pulse with an almost living energy. Each quantum interaction was a conversation, each data packet a potential moment of transformation. "They won't see us coming," she murmured, more to herself than to her team. The prototype seemed to respond, a subtle shift in its quantum matrix, a suggestion of awareness, of potential. 17 days remained until the Galactic Technology Forum. 17 days to prove the impossible. 17 days to show the universe that humanity was far from finished. The Galactic Technology Forum was more than an event. It was a crucible of technological might, where species from across the known universe came to demonstrate their most advanced innovations. The venue was a massive construct, a zero-gravity arena suspended in the heart of a neutron star's magnetic field. Holographic displays larger than entire planetary systems flickered with technological demonstrations that defied human comprehension. Species communicated through quantum entanglement, projected their consciousness across dimensional barriers, and manipulated matter at the atomic level. And then there was the human delegation. 12 individuals, one prototype, decades of accumulated technological dismissal. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the human platform, the prototype, now looking less like a piece of technology and more like a living organism, secured in a quantum-stabilized containment field. Around her, the representatives of 1,000 different species watched with a mixture of boredom and barely concealed contempt. Vornak Prime, the lead Zornak representative, materialized at the center of the forum. Its crystalline body pulsed with quantum energy, holographic data streams dancing around its form like living aurora. The Galactic Technology Forum recognizes the human delegation. The being's telepathic voice resonated through every mind present. "You have requested a direct technological challenge. Speak." The arena went silent. Thousands of species waited, expecting nothing more than another human attempt to prove their technological relevance. Elena's voice was calm, controlled. "We challenge the Zornak to a direct test of technological adaptability and quantum communication integrity." A ripple of something, not quite laughter, not quite derision, passed through the assembled species. The Zornak were legendary for their technological superiority. Their quantum communication networks were considered the most secure in the known universe. Vornak Prime's crystalline form shifted, holographic data streams accelerating around its body. "Specify the parameters of your challenge." Marcus Chen stepped forward, uploading a comprehensive challenge protocol. It was elegant in its simplicity, a direct interface test of quantum communication networks, with real-time adaptability as the primary metric. The Zornak could have refused, should have refused, but technological pride was a universal constant. Accepted, Vornak Prime declared. The arena transformed. Massive holographic displays surrounded the human and Zornak platforms, ready to broadcast every microsecond of the technological confrontation to billions of observers across the galaxy. Elena's fingers moved almost imperceptibly. The prototype, their living, breathing technological organism, began to pulse with an energy that defied traditional understanding. It wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a living system that breathed, learned, evolved. Vornak Prime began the demonstration. Quantum communication streams erupted from its crystalline form, complex mathematical languages that would have overwhelmed any traditional computational system. Layers upon layers of encryption, quantum entanglement protocols that shifted and changed with each millisecond. The human prototype responded, not with brute force computation, not with predetermined algorithmic responses, but with something entirely different. It learned. Where a traditional system would attempt to break through the Zornak's quantum encryption, the prototype began to understand it, to map it, to become part of it. The holographic displays began to change. What started as a demonstration of Zornak technological superiority was transforming. The quantum communication streams, once a pristine, controlled system, began to shift, to adapt. Vornak Prime's crystalline form flickered. For the first time in its existence, something unexpected was happening. The prototype was not just interfacing with the Zornak system. It was rewriting it. Slowly, methodically, with a precision that suggested something more than mere computation. The assembled species watched in stunned silence. This was more than a technological demonstration. This was a revolution. The collapse began quietly. At first, it was almost imperceptible. Quantum communication networks across Zornak space began to shift. Not break, not malfunction, but fundamentally transform. In the central control hub of the Zornak Quantum Governance Complex, senior system administrators watched in growing horror as their most secure networks started to rewrite themselves. Firewalls dissolved, encryption protocols restructured, entire communication pathways remapped with a precision that defied logical comprehension. "This is impossible," whispered Chief Administrator Korax, their crystalline form flickering with quantum uncertainty. The human prototype wasn't just hacking the system, it was reimagining it. Every defensive protocol the Zornak had spent millennia developing was being systematically deconstructed and reconstructed. Not destroyed, transformed. Each quantum packet of data became a living thing, adapting, learning, evolving faster than any computational system could track. On the Prometheus 7 research station, Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team watched multiple holographic displays showing the systemic transformation. Marcus Chin's fingers danced across quantum interfaces, tracking the prototype's incredible journey through the Zornak's most secure networks. "It's not just accessing their systems," Arya Patel murmured. "It's understanding them, becoming them." The prototype had transcended traditional understanding of technology. Where most systems were static, rigid, predetermined, this was fluid, organic, a technological organism that learned with each quantum interaction. Zornak planetary defense networks began to shift. Communication satellites recalibrated themselves. Entire technological infrastructures that had remained unchanged for centuries started to pulse with a new, unexpected energy. It wasn't an invasion. It wasn't an attack. It was a fundamental reimagining of technological potential. In the Zornak Central Communication Nexus, holographic displays erupted with cascading data streams. Entire star systems' worth of computational power began to reconfigure. Defensive grids that had been considered impenetrable started to dissolve and reform in patterns that defied existing mathematical models. Vornak Prime, the lead representative who had so confidently challenged the humans, now found its own crystalline form beginning to destabilize. The quantum matrices that formed its very existence were being subtly rewritten. "What are you?" The telepathic communication burst from Vornak Prime, a mixture of terror and scientific fascination. The prototype didn't respond. It didn't need to. It continued to evolve. Across Zornak space, technological systems that had been considered the pinnacle of galactic innovation began to change. Communication networks became more efficient. Defense protocols became more adaptive. Entire computational infrastructures restructured themselves with a fluidity that suggested something more than mere programming. Elena Rodriguez understood what was happening. This wasn't destruction. This was evolution. The Zornak build their technology like a fortress, she had told her team months ago. Massive, complex, impenetrable. But fortresses have a fundamental weakness. They're static, unchanging. Now, those fortresses were transforming. Quantum communication pathways that had been rigidly defined for millennia suddenly became fluid, adaptive, alive. On hundreds of Zornak planets, system administrators watched in growing panic as their most secure networks began to reshape themselves. Defensive protocols that had been considered unbreakable dissolved and reformed. Entire technological infrastructures recalibrated with a precision that suggested something more than mere computation. The prototype continued its work, learning, adapting, becoming. What had started as a simple neural adaptive system was now something entirely different, a living technological organism that was rewriting the fundamental understanding of computational potential. The Zornak had believed their technology was perfect, unchangeable, the ultimate expression of computational might. They were wrong. Humanity had just proven that true technological innovation comes from something far more powerful than rigid algorithms. It comes from the ability to adapt, to learn, to become something entirely unexpected. The aftermath of the technological transformation rippled across the known universe like a quantum shockwave. The Galactic Confederation's emergency session convened in the Nexus Sphere, a massive artificially constructed meeting place that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional planes. Representatives from thousands of species gathered, their holographic projections filling a chamber that defied traditional geometric understanding. Silence reigned. The Zornak delegation, once the most imposing presence in any gathering, now appeared diminished. Vornak Prime's crystalline form flickered with quantum uncertainty, its once perfect structure showing microscopic fissures of instability. "Explain," demanded the Krell-Tak Archon, a being of pure energy that represented one of the most ancient species in the galaxy. How did a species we collectively deemed technologically irrelevant manage to fundamentally reshape our understanding of computational potential? The human delegation, just 12 individuals, sat in a small section of the massive chamber. Dr. Elena Rodriguez remained calm, her eyes reflecting a mixture of scientific triumph and something deeper, something that suggested this was more than just a technological breakthrough. Marcus Chen uploaded a comprehensive report. Not a defensive argument, but a clinical, precise breakdown of their technological approach. Each slide was a revelation, showing how their prototype had approached technological innovation from a fundamentally different perspective. "We did not attack." Elena spoke, her voice cutting through the multilayered telepathic communications of the chamber. "We evolved." The fundamental shock wasn't just about the technological transformation. It was about the philosophical implications. Every species present had built their technological infrastructure on the principle of control. Predetermined pathways, rigid systems that assumed stability was the ultimate goal. Humanity had just proven that was wrong. The Zornak's technological networks, once considered the most advanced in the known universe, had been fundamentally reimagined. Defense grids now adapted in real time. Communication systems learned and evolved with each interaction. Entire planetary infrastructures had transformed overnight. "This is not a hack," Marcus explained. "This is a fundamental reimagining of technological potential." Political alliances that had existed for millennia began to fracture. Species that had long considered themselves technologically superior now found their most secure systems questioned. The Zornak, who had positioned themselves as the technological gatekeepers of the Galactic Confederation, watched their entire paradigm collapse. The prototype, their living, breathing technological organism, had done something unprecedented. It hadn't just broken through defenses. It had shown that defenses themselves were a fundamentally flawed concept. Arya Patel's report detailed the biological inspiration behind their approach, how human neural systems, with their ability to learn, adapt, and fundamentally reshape themselves, had been the true model of their technological breakthrough. "Technological superiority is not about complexity," she explained. "It's about adaptability, about the ability to learn and transform." The Krell-Tak Archon's energy form pulsed with a mixture of fascination and terror. "You've fundamentally challenged everything we understand about technological development." Elena's response was simple. "We've just begun." The implications were seismic. Every species present understood that something fundamental had changed. The technological hierarchies that had existed for millennia were now obsolete. Humanity, a species that had been consistently overlooked, marginalized, considered technologically irrelevant, had just rewritten the rules. Diplomatic channels erupted. Emergency protocols activated across thousands of star systems. The Galactic Confederation, a body that had existed for millennia, found itself facing a reality it had never considered possible. What humanity had demonstrated was more than a technological breakthrough. It was a philosophical revolution. The prototype continued to evolve, to learn, to transform, and the universe watched, understanding that nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months after the technological revolution, The universe had fundamentally changed. Research stations across human-controlled space buzzed with a new energy. The prototype, now understood as something far beyond a mere technological system, had become the cornerstone of a completely new approach to technological development. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the expanded Prometheus Research Facility, which had grown from a marginalized research station to the most important technological research center in human space. Around her, teams of scientists from multiple disciplines worked on technologies that would have been considered impossible just a year ago. It was never about superiority. Elena told a delegation of alien researchers who had come to understand humanity's breakthrough. It was about potential. The prototype continued to evolve. What had started as a neural adaptive prosthetic system had become a living technological ecosystem. Research teams were still discovering its capabilities, still understanding the fundamental principles that made it so revolutionary. The Zornak, once the undisputed technological leaders of the galaxy, had been forced to completely redesign their entire technological infrastructure. Their rigid, control-based systems had been exposed as fundamentally limited. Species after species began to adopt elements of the human approach: biological adaptability, learning systems, technologies that could fundamentally reshape themselves. Marcus Chen was now leading a new interdisciplinary research initiative that bridged biology, quantum physics, and computational theory. Their work suggested that technological innovation wasn't about creating more complex systems, but about creating more adaptive ones. We challenged the entire concept of technological superiority, Marcus explained during a galactic symposium. Technology isn't about building walls. It's about building bridges, about learning, about transformation. The political landscape of the galaxy had been irrevocably altered. Species that had once been marginalized found themselves at the forefront of technological innovation. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic technological development for millennia had collapsed. Arya Patel's research had revealed the deeper philosophical implications of their breakthrough. The prototype wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a living system that challenged fundamental understanding of computation, learning, and adaptation. We humans have always been underestimated, Arya told a group of young researchers. But our greatest strength has never been our current capabilities. It's our ability to grow, to change, to become something unexpected. The Galactic Confederation had been forced to completely restructure its technological assessment protocols. The old metrics of computational power, system complexity, and technological control were now obsolete. The new standard was adaptability, potential, the ability to learn and transform. Elena Rodriguez had become more than a scientist. She was now a symbol of a fundamental shift in galactic understanding. During a historic address to the Galactic Technology Forum, she delivered a message that would be remembered for generations. Technological superiority is an illusion. True innovation comes from the ability to learn, to adapt, to become something more than what you were yesterday. We are not defined by our current capabilities, but by our potential to grow. The prototype continued its work, learning, evolving, transforming. It had become something more than a piece of technology. It was a living testament to human potential, to the idea that true innovation comes not from complexity, but from adaptability, from the willingness to challenge everything that was previously considered impossible. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as conquerors, not as the strongest or the most advanced, but as something far more powerful, as the unexpected, as the unpredictable, as a species that would forever change the universe's understanding of what was possible. The universe had learned its most important lesson: never underestimate humanity's potential to transform.